Welcome to the CorEvitas Inflammatory Bowel Disease Drug Safety and Effectiveness Registry Follow-Up Visit Training. At CorEvitas, we advance patient care by generating real-world insights into health conditions and therapeutics, and we apply cutting-edge scientific methods to generate robust, real-world evidence and insights. We do this through demonstrating our core values. Diversity. We value human diversity and strive to create an environment that is just, equitable, and inclusive. Passion. We believe deeply in who we are and what we do to advance patient care. Integrity. We are open, honest, and ethical. Collaboration. We put team ahead of individual. Innovation. We challenge the status quo and believe the best idea wins. The agenda that will be covered in this presentation will include the following topics: registry design and eligibility review, overview of data collection, follow-up visits, medication capture with scenarios, adverse event and reporting, best practice submission guidelines, and reimbursement. Registry design. Disease measures and structured clinical data are collected from patients and providers at the time of routine clinical encounters using standardized data collection forms provided by the sponsor. Relevant standard of care laboratory and imaging results are expected to be reported when available. Active screening for any serious or non-serious adverse events since the last CorEvitas visit, including but not limited to new or worsening comorbidities, drug toxicities, infections, pregnancy events, must be conducted throughout the life cycle of the registry. Inclusion criteria. A patient must meet all the following criteria to participate in the registry. 1. Has been diagnosed with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis by a gastroenterologist. 2. Is at least 18 years of age or older. 3. Is willing to provide personal information. 4. Meets one of the following sets of conditions at the time of enrollment, A or B. Has a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, who has never taken a biologic or small molecule medication, i.e. no past exposure to either drug type, and has started taking a new eligible immunosuppressant medication within the 12 months prior to the enrollment visit, or is prescribed or starting a new eligible immunosuppressant medication at the enrollment visit. A new medication is a medication that the patient has never taken before. UC patients are also eligible if they have started taking a new eligible biologic or eligible small molecule medication within the 12 months prior to the enrollment visit, or is prescribed or starting a new eligible biologic or eligible small molecule medication at the enrollment visit. A new medication is a medication that the patient has never taken before. Crohn's disease patients may enroll if they have been prescribed or starting a new eligible biologic or eligible small molecule medication at the enrollment visit. A new medication is a medication that the patient has never taken before. Exclusion criteria. Any of the following would exclude the patient from participating in the registry. 1. Is participating or planning to participate in a double-blind randomized trial for an IBD drug. Note: concurrent participation in another observational registry or open label phase 3B or 4 trial is allowed. Refer to the eligible medications appendix for a complete list of qualifying medications by drug type. Switching to a different formulation of the same medication qualifies as a new medication under this criterion. For example, switching from Xeljanz to Xeljanz XR qualifies as a new medication. Switching from an originator to a biosimilar or to another brand of biosimilar also qualifies as a new medication. For example, switching from Remicade to Renflexis or switching from Renflexis to Inflectra qualifies as a new medication. Overview of the data collection forms. Subject enrollment and follow-up forms must be completed by the patient using the IRB-approved sponsor-provided forms. When the subject form is completed on paper, subject personnel are responsible for transcribing the data recorded by the patient into the EDC within 5 business days and no later than 90 days from the encounter date, or the visit may be determined ineligible for payment. Study personnel should review patient responses for completeness. The provider enrollment, follow-up, and laboratory and imaging results forms display and define all required assessment and data elements that must be collected for the registry at the time of a routine clinical encounter, i.e. standard of care. Assessments and other data collected in the provider enrollment and follow-up forms can be recorded directly in the EDC system at the time of the registry visit or transcribed, i.e. data entered, within 5 business days and no later than 90 days from the encounter date, or the visit may be determined ineligible for payment. Follow-up visit. Registry follow-up visits should be conducted approximately every 6 months at the time of routine gastroenterology office visits when the patient's standard of care evaluation schedule permits. Routine or standard of care clinical encounters may occur in between 2 registry visits, but the data collected for each follow-up visit must cover the entire time period since the last registry visit. If more than an 18-month period, i.e. 540 days, has elapsed without the collection of follow-up data, the site must exit the patient from the registry by completing a subject exit form and reporting any applicable targeted events on the appropriate targeted event forms. Early follow-up visits may also be conducted in conjunction with routine clinical encounters if a sample is being collected at the visit for a subject who is also participating in the optional CorEvitas Precision Medicine biorepository. Lost to follow-up is strictly defined as 1. The last contact date for the subject has exceeded 18 months, i.e. 540 days, and 2. Since the last contact date, the site has documented at least 3 outreach attempts, i.e. telephone, certified letter, to contact the subject, and despite the repeated attempts, the site is unable to confirm the subject's vital status, i.e. living or deceased. If the subject's vital status is known, but the subject fails to respond to the site's inquiries, the subject cannot be classified as lost to follow-up. When this occurs, the subject should be administratively exited only after consultation with a registry manager. If more than an 18-month period, 540 days, has elapsed without a registry visit or targeted event reported, and all reasonable attempts have been exhausted to establish contact with the patient, the site must exit the patient from the registry by completing a subject exit form and reporting any applicable targeted events on the appropriate targeted event forms. Once a subject has exited the registry, regardless of reason, the subject is not eligible for re-enrollment or continued participation in the registry at a later time. Each registry follow-up visit window is anchored to the date of the last eligible registry visit, enrollment, or follow-up. In other words, the visit window calculation starts over each time an eligible registry visit is conducted. A follow-up visit is eligible for payment if one of the following are true. A. At least 150 days have passed since the last registry visit. B. Less than 150 days have passed since the last registry visit, and the patient meets one of the following sets of conditions at the time of a follow-up visit. A or B. A. Has a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, has never taken a biologic or small molecule medication, i.e. no past exposure to either drug type, is prescribed or starting a new eligible immunosuppressant medication at the follow-up visit. A new medication is a medication that the patient has never taken before. Or B. Has a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, is prescribed or starting a new eligible biologic or eligible small molecule medication at the follow-up visit. A new medication is a medication that the patient has never taken before. Refer to the Eligible Medications Appendix for a complete list of qualifying medications by drug type. Switching to a different formulation of the same medication qualifies as a new medication under this criterion, i.e. switching from Xeljanz to Xeljanz XR qualifies as a new medication. Switching from an originator to a biosimilar or to another brand of biosimilar also qualifies as a new medication. For example, switching from Remicade to Renflexis or switching from Renflexis to Inflectra qualifies as a new medication. Medication capture and successful medication reconciliation process. Quality in data collection is paramount to the success and overall health of the registry. The following points are quick reminders of best practices. Thoroughly obtain all previous and current medications at the time of enrollment. At every registry visit, cross-check the subject's current medications against the subject's medical record and past registry visits. This ensures that medication dosages, frequencies, and dates have been accurately captured and they are carried forward from visit to visit. Two key pieces of information about medications used for the treatment of IBD must be documented at every visit. Drug status immediately prior to the current visit, also known as of yesterday, and changes prescribed to the drug on the day of the visit. Any drugs that may have been started, stopped, or modified in any way in between registry visits must be captured in the EDC, including start and stop dates, last dose and frequency, and the reasons for stopping. A reason code must be provided for all drugs, excluding steroids, that were started, stopped, or modified since the last registry visit, and for changes prescribed on the day of the follow-up visit. Reason codes can be found at the bottom of page 5 on the provider follow-up form. Follow-up visit drug capture scenarios. Enrollment drug capture when a medication is prescribed at enrollment but never started, and a new drug is started between Corrivitas visits. Miss Carey sees her gastroenterologist and she is prescribed Xeljanz 5 mg BID. A prescription is written and the intent is that she will begin this drug within the next few weeks pending insurance approval. An enrollment visit is completed as she meets the inclusion criteria and has never previously used this medication for the treatment of her IBD. The pull-down menus in the clinical EDC are used to select drug type and the specific medication prescribed. The No Prior Use box is checked and the changes prescribed today are to start the medication. A reason code is selected and the dose and frequency prescribed are recorded. It is also recorded that the first dose of the medication was not administered at today's visit. Miss Carey returns to the clinic July 1st, 6 months later, for her follow-up visit and reports that Xeljanz was never started because her insurance had denied it. She also came in for a clinic visit between registry visits on April 7, 2020, when she was prescribed and administered her first dose of Entyvio. The pull-down menus in the clinical EDC are used to select drug type and the specific medication prescribed. Entyvio was started since the last registry visit, so the started box is selected. The start date is entered and a reason code is selected. One loading dose of 300 mg every 6 weeks was administered. No changes were prescribed on the day of the visit, and the current Entyvio dose is recorded, 300 mg every 8 weeks. Medications prescribed at a prior registry visit but not started are captured on the Provider Other Case Details page. A reason code is required. Follow-up visit drug capture scenarios. Capturing a prescribed medication start at a follow-up visit, which includes a dose modification. Mrs. Quinn sees her gastroenterologist and she is prescribed Xeljanz 5 mg BID. A prescription is written and the intent is that she will begin this drug within the next few weeks. An enrollment visit is completed as she meets the inclusion criteria and has never previously used this medication for the treatment of her IBD. The pull-down menus in the clinical EDC are used to select drug type and the specific medication prescribed. Mrs. Quinn has never used Xeljanz before, and her provider prescribed the medication at today's visit because she has active disease. The dose and frequency are selected, and it is recorded that the first dose was not administered at today's visit. Mrs. Quinn returns to the clinic July 8th, 6 months and 7 days later, for her follow-up visit and reports her Xeljanz was in fact started July 1st at the prescribed 5 mg BID. But because she was concerned about COVID-19 and being immunocompromised, her dose was modified on July 7th to 5 mg QD. The pull-down menus in the clinical EDC are used to select drug type and the specific medication prescribed. Changes made since the last registry visit include starting Xeljanz and modifying it, so both boxes are checked. The start date and reason code and the modified date and reason code are entered. No additional changes were prescribed at today's visit. The current dose and frequency for Xeljanz is recorded, 5 milligrams QD, which is the reduced dose due to Mrs. Quinn's concerns about COVID, and the past dose or originally prescribed dose and frequency of 5 milligrams BID are recorded. Use this table to determine the required fields for data entry when there has been no change or only one change to a medication since the last registry visit. Beginning on the leftmost column of the chart, find your scenario and then trace across that row to determine the field to complete in the EDC. For example, if a medication was stopped since the last registry visit and a new medication was prescribed at today's visit, under the Changes Made Since the Last Corrivitas Visit column, you would locate the stopped status change and move to the right to locate the row with the changes prescribed today that fits your scenario, in this case, Start, which is the third row from the bottom. An X on the table indicates the data required to be entered in the EDC. So you would check the box for Stopped since the last visit in the EDC, enter dates of use and a reason code. For changes prescribed today, you would select Start and select a reason code for this start. Enter the dose and frequency prescribed today, and if the medication was started today, select that box to confirm. This table can be used to determine the required fields for data entry when there have been up to 2 status changes to a medication since the last registry visit. This table can be used to determine the required fields for data entry when there have been up to 3 status changes to a medication since the last registry visit. At each registry follow-up visit, document any medications used as well as any changes since the last eligible registry visit, providing reason codes and dates for drug starts, stops, and/or modifications. Indicate any changes prescribed on the day of the visit along with a reason code and record the maintenance dose in the drug tables. Loading doses are reported on page 7 of the provider form and should be provided for drug starts prescribed on the day of the visit or since the last registry visit as applicable. Remember to confirm if the first dose of a drug was received at the visit. Accurate documentation and attention to detail will help to ensure successful medication reconciliation. At each registry visit, confirm the 5 rights: right subject, right drug, right time, right dose, and right route to help reduce errors. Apply the 5 rights at each registry visit by ensuring you are reviewing the correct subject's chart, confirming the drug name with the subject and/or pharmacy, asking the subject when, how often, or with what frequency they take their IBD medication, verify the dose being taken, and confirm the route of administration. As you design the medication reconciliation process at your site, consider following these essential principles. Develop and define a single medication list source of truth shared by all disciplines. Educate and clearly define roles and responsibilities for subjects and their families, caregivers, and each discipline. Implement the right thing to do. Document interactions and clarifications with all those involved and follow through on discrepancies. If unintended discrepancies are identified, clarify and resolve these with the provider and/or prescriber. A multidisciplinary training, standardized approach will ensure comprehensive and consistent documentation for medication reconciliation. Drug Safety Event Reporting. The objective of the registry is to create a cohort of IBD patients or subjects to study long-term safety and effectiveness of IBD treatments. Because the long-term understanding of safety and efficacy is still limited even after regulatory approval, enrollment and long-term follow-up of a large number of diverse, real-world patients exposed to therapies of interest is important to understand safety and effectiveness. The observational, structured data collected will be used to better characterize the natural history of the disease and to extensively evaluate the effectiveness and safety of medications approved for the treatment of IBD to support ongoing risk-benefit evaluation by drug manufacturers and regulators. Timeliness, completeness, and accuracy in completion and submission of registry forms are critical for drug safety surveillance purposes. All adverse events must be reported regardless of seriousness or relationship to therapy. Targeted events are adverse events of special interest per the registry protocol and are indicated with a flag in the provider follow-up form or subject enrollment and follow-up forms for pregnancy events. Refer to Safety Reporting via Targeted Adverse Event and Pregnancy Event Forms Appendix for the list of targeted events reportable in the registry. Targeted event forms are used to report any serious adverse events, pregnancy events, or other protocol-defined adverse events of special interest, whether serious or non-serious, for example, VTE, occurring during registry participation. Refer to appendix named Safety Reporting via Targeted Adverse Event and Pregnancy Event Forms for more information. Targeted events occurring during registry participation are to be followed and targeted event forms updated throughout outcome resolution. Pregnancy event form is to be completed upon learning of a pregnancy occurring at the time of or after registry enrollment and updated through pregnancy outcome. Reporting window. Targeted adverse events and pregnancy events must be reported to CorEvitas as soon as possible after awareness, within 24 hours. Whether reported at or between registry follow-up visits. Adverse events, AEs, of special interest and pregnancy events, collectively referred to as targeted events, that occur in registry patients are captured via customized Targeted Adverse Event, or TAE, forms and the pregnancy event form. These include all events meeting the criteria for reporting as a serious adverse event, or SAE, and other AEs of special interest that are reportable in a TAE form regardless of seriousness. Refer to appendix named Safety Reporting via Targeted Adverse Event and Pregnancy Event Forms for more information. Reporting window. When a TAE or pregnancy event has occurred, the site must submit the appropriate targeted event form within 24 hours of awareness. Source documents. Redacted or de-identified medical records that support confirmation of the reported event or diagnosis must be submitted with the TAE or pregnancy event form once they are available. Pregnancies are events of special interest in the registry population. There is limited data available regarding exposures to systemic therapies during pregnancy and associated safety outcomes. In the event of planned or unplanned exposures, additional data may be helpful in identifying potential risks and better understanding and characterizing the comparative safety of various treatment options. Subjects may initially report a pregnancy via the subject enrollment or subject follow-up forms. A pregnancy event form should also be completed by the site upon learning of a pregnancy or pregnancy-related outcome in a patient that has been enrolled in the registry. The initial form should be completed with any available details, including additional details regarding the pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes provided as updates become available. Supporting documentation should also be provided and may include hospitalization records for births and whether or not complications were reported. Supporting documentation may also include the results of any diagnostic testing performed to confirm or rule out a congenital anomaly, birth defect, or adverse pregnancy outcome, particularly those impacting the mother or fetus. Death is an important outcome in the registry. It is very important to capture as much information as possible regarding drug exposures through date of death, death date, primary cause of death if known, and any associated adverse events. These are important data for safety analyses. The corresponding TAE forms for the primary cause of death and other adverse events associated with death should be completed in detail, and source documents are to be submitted, including autopsy report/death certificate. Any known targeted events that occurred since the last completed registry follow-up visit should be also reported using the appropriate targeted event forms. Death is an event outcome and should not be reported as an event term unless the cause of death is unknown. The general serious TAE form should be used to report deaths when cause is not known. If the cause of death becomes known after the date of initial report, the TAE form should be revised to reflect the specific diagnosis that resulted in death, for example, myocardial infarction. Even for subjects who are exited from the study for reasons other than death, Any targeted events occurring prior to the subject exiting the registry are to be reported to CorEvitas. Targeted event forms are to be updated as new information becomes available to the site and followed and updated through event resolution or final outcome. Data Best Practice Submission Guidelines. Follow-up visit tracker reports are sent twice monthly. Please review these reports to identify those subjects who are due or overdue for their next registry visit. If more than an 18-month period, or 540 days, has elapsed without the collection of follow-up data and all reasonable attempts have been exhausted to establish contact with the patient, the site must exit the patient from the registry by completing a subject exit form and reporting any applicable targeted events on the appropriate targeted event forms. Enrollment and follow-up forms. Sites should enter data directly into the EDC system at the time of the registry visit or within 5 business days of the encounter date. Targeted Adverse Events and Pregnancy Event Form. Data should be entered as soon as registry staff member is aware of the event, within 24 hours of awareness. Subject Exit Form. Sites should enter data directly into the EDC system at the time of the registry visit or within 5 business days of the encounter date. If due to death, enter as soon as registry staff member becomes aware of the event, along with associated TAEs. Reimbursement. A registry visit is deemed eligible when the following is true. Subject was deemed eligible for the enrollment. Payment for the visit was not previously executed. Visit falls within protocol-defined visit window. Data entry for both the provider and subject form must be completed and entered into the EDC system within 90 days of the date the visit was conducted. Minimum subject PII was properly recorded into the Omnicom Trial Master Honest Broker database. The visit completion page is populated and signed for the visit being evaluated for payment. Additionally, best practice is to ensure all data queries are responded to and any erroneous data is corrected. Effective 1 April 2023. Enrollment and follow-up visit reimbursement eligibility. For a registry visit to be eligible for payment, data entry of both the provider and subject forms must be complete and entered into the Electronic Data Capture EDC system within 90 days of the date the visit was conducted. Quarterly payment cycle. All registry visits must be entered into the EDC systems by the last day of the last month of the quarter to be eligible for payment in the following month. Thank you. For all inquiries and communication with the CorEvitas team, please use the IBD@corevitas.com email.